Yeah.
We can.
That's all right. Okay, good, great. Okay, so Pekudei, right. The interesting thing initially about Pekudei is the translation of the word. The word pakad, the root pakad, right, is supposed to be one of the most unusual words actually in the whole of Tanakh. It's a very, very difficult word to translate. There's a fascinating website called Balashon, which goes through specifically etymology of words, if you're into that type of thing. And basically they identify there, number one, the word, again, Pei Kuf Dalet, occurs many hundreds of times across Tanakh, and in very different, unrelated contexts, right? So basically, in a very general sense, it seems to mean to give attention to. That's what it means, right? The word pakat, right? You can really think of so many in your mind. He makes a list. This website makes a list of the different cases, circumstances that pakad appears, right? And he sort of gathers them together, the different meanings they have. And he goes like this. It can mean to attend to observe, to remember, right? Hashem pakadasar, right? To seek, and sometimes to seek in vain. So to miss. There are opposites of the word as well, right? To visit, and sometimes to visit in an evil set, like a punishment type thing. A sort of, there's a exactly right. To number, which is potentially here, Pekudei, but we'll see, right? Or also to put someone in charge, to appoint a pakid, as someone who's in charge. So this is a fascinating thing because you've got a word that that can mean so many different things, or so many different used in so many different contexts. He goes through all the grammatical different sides of the, which I'm not going to go into so much, all the different ways this can work. One of the suggestions given though is that really the possibility is that actually is something. It maybe the basis of the word is actually about missing, if you like, to missing something, in the sense that therefore you get to attend to and to observe and to and to visit. It's a noticing of something, if that makes sense. It's something like that, right? Along those lines, right? And from there you get a sort of an offshoot of that is like appointing, numbering, commanding. There's a noticing, or if you like, that goes with this word, right? Why am I giving this as the introduction to the shir? Because we're very familiar with the way Rashi understands the parsha, and it's often the case that because Rashi is the preeminent of all the Mefarshim, so we automatically go with what Rashi's pshat. And Rashi's pshat is that it means to number. The first Rashi in the parsha, nimnu kol mishkale nidvas hamishkan lekesav l'zov nechoshes. They were listed, counted, all of the different amounts. The nimnu kol kelov l'chol avidos, and therefore all the items are listed as well. And therefore he says it means ele pekudei. The Onkelos says the same. Elaine, he translates it elaine minyonei, the numbering. These are the count. This is the accounting. Right? Accounting. Rav Hirsch says that there are a number of problems with this. You translating in this, a number of questions on Rashi's pshat. He says like this. He says that basically, the primary reason he has is that the information given and also the counting are incomplete lists. The Torah says the total donations only of gold, right? Nechosh, it's of zahav and nechoshes and copper, right? Silver, you've only got the total of the half shkalim mentioned, right? There's the census, not the total of all the donated silver, which is mentioned earlier in Perek Lamed Hey Pasuk Chof Gimel. So, plus the amounts of the other materials that we use in the Mishkan are not mentioned here at all. And so this is one problem. And he says, secondly, the second problem is, he says, you never find in the whole of Tanakh that the word pokad is used in the sense of a total amount of material, of goods. So it's used in the context of numbering people, of numbering people, and he says it's never far away from that basic sense of pokad, which he translates almost as to think. Like I said before, it's almost like to notice. So you have the pekudei ha'edah. He says, what does it mean, pekudei ha'edah? So we really translate, I suppose, the appointees over the congregation, over the right, of the Eidah, right? But really, it's those who come to mind in the concept of Ada, right? When you talk about Ada, these are the ones who come to mind, the noticeable ones in that way, if you like, right? The ones who, or the members even, who make up the community, right? So therefore, he says like this. He argues that Pekudei HaMishkan means all the things that come to mind in connection with the Mishkan, right? Almost like, like we said, Hashem Pokados, there's a noticing there's the things that come to mind in the context of the Mishkan. He says that's how he translates these words. These are the things, we're listing things that belong to the Mishkan, that comprise and constitute the Mishkan. They are all designated as Pekudei HaMishkan. What is the significance of that? Not the fact that they're numbered. Remember, he's moving away from he's going in a different pshat, not like Rashi. Rashi learns it's numbering. He says he has difficulty with the numbering pshat, say numbering, because as we said, it's not a complete list in a numbering sense. So what does Pekudei HaMishkan mean? It is the things that are designated as part of the Mishkan. And therefore, the key point and the key message of this posuk, says Rav Hirsch, is that every single piece, an item, was integral to the Mishkan. Nothing was secondary to the Mishkan. They were all Pekudei HaMishkan. They were all the things which come to mind when you talk about the Mishkan. Is everything, okay? Is everything. Now, the challenge, which Rav Hirsch acknowledges, is that therefore it cannot be only going on what's listed in the psukim after this. It also must refer to what has come before, okay? Even though Eile generally means Eile Pekudei, means it's what follows and not what after, okay? But he says it's a continuation. If you look clearly, it's a continuation of the preceding parokim, and that's how it is. And therefore, the Eile Pekudei, he says, is in the middle of the description of the Mishkan. It goes on the things which are before and the things which are afterwards as well. It's listing the things that belong to the Mishkan. Now, Rav Hirsch, interestingly, wasn't the first to say this. He actually mentions that the Sforno also learns like this. So if you're following inside, the Sforno says, the very first Sforno in the Parsha, Kol echod mechelkei HaMishkan haksuvim lamalo, all of the parts and the different constituent pieces of the Mishkan that I mentioned earlier on, heim osom hapekudim, they are the ones which are, as we're translating it, come to mind when that you should number them. Again, we should count them, if you like, with name, although we're not translating it as numbering. They are brought together in this sense. The Zeki kol echod mehem, says the Sforno, each individual one of them, each one is significant, and each one should be called with a name as its own, has its own individual significance. And therefore, he says, therefore that this is if you just skip a line to what he says, there's nothing missing from them. So he says that they always remain standing. When it says, he says, Atse shittim omdim, that the shittim would remain standing, she'omdim la'olam la'om me'olamim. It's in the sense that they always remain. They always remain because the Mishkan never fell into the hands of our enemies. That's one significant thing about the Mishkan. It never fell down. It remained standing forever. So the idea is, according to the Sforno, is that the Torah is specifically highlighting the fact that there's a lot less in the Mishkan than the Beis Hamikdash later. There's a lot less. If you look at compare it to how much was put into the Beis Hamikdash, it's a lot less. But it lasts forever. It remains permanent forever because it is due to the fact that it was completely contributed to, and it was down to the devotion of the people completely, as we've learned for all these parashas. So we'll come back. There's another Sforno which we'll come back to afterwards. But the significance of the way Rav Hirsch and the Sforno and Rav Hirsch understanding the beginning of this parsha Eile Pekudei is that it's not that it's bringing a list in this sense, but it's noticing the significance and the importance of every constituent part. Now, within that, there is one anomaly, and that is the Oren. What is the anomaly about the Aron? So if you look at the what the Torah says in if you look at Perek Mem, Posuk Chof, and you'll see how this links hopefully soon. We come right towards the end when Moshe Rabbeinu is actually putting the pieces together. Vayikach, the Torah says Vayikach, and he took Vayitzin es Oedus el ha'Aron. He put the Eidus, the Luchos, Rashi says, inside the Aron. Vayosem es Abadim al ha'Aron. He put the poles on the Aron. Vayitzin es HaKaperes al ha'Aron Mumal. Then he placed the lid on top of the Aron. The problem is that if you turn back now to Parshas Vayakel, Perek Lamed Zayin Posuk Aleph, Perek Lamed Zayin Posuk Aleph. And again, we have having a separate Vayakel and Pekudei gives us an opportunity to see parts of the Torah that we generally haven't really spent much time on before. What does it say? What does it say here? So here it says that Betzalel made the Aron, right? Made the Aron, right? Vayas Betzalel Aron, right? Atzeshitim. This is the construction of the Aron itself. Vayas Badei Atzeshitim. Vayatzav on skip a few psukim. It describes the formation of the Aron. Posuk Hey. Vayoveas Abadim Atzabaois. Okay, he placed the staves, the star, right? The poles they used to carry it inside the Aron, right? On the through the on the sides of the Aron. Los Seis Es Aron to carry the Aron. To carry the Aron. Okay, now that's the problem with this. He's placed them inside. And what do we know from Parshas Truma? You can never remove them. They are coming to go, yeah, you can never remove them. Torah says in Truma, the Tabos Aron, Yehu Abadim, Lo Yosurim Imenu. You can't remove them. It's a basic contradiction, a basic problem, right? You with me? It says Betzalel places them in. It says he places the poles in the Aron, and here in Pekudei, it says again Vayove that he places them Vayosem es Abadim ala Aron. Now you're not going to tell me that this idea of never removing them, and it's awesome in HaTorah to remove from the Aron. You're not going to tell me that the very first occasion that they actually construct the Aron, they transgress this, right? They actually remove them from the back again. It can't be, right? So this is a question that has been asked before. The Rishonim asked the question, or a similar question. The Tosfos asked the question in Yuma about when the Aron, the setting of the Aron in Parshas Bamidbar, where it says that Aaron comes to, they took down the when they took everything down, they took the paruchas down, they used it to cover the Aron ha'edus, etc. And then and the Torah there says that it actually says there the somu badov, right? The somu badov. This is in Parshas Bamidbar. They should place the stave. I'm not even play a somu badov. You can't take them out, right? So Tosfos in Yuma learns that there were two sets of 4 rings. Actually 2 sets of poles, right? So there were 2 which would never be removed. Those were always there. And there were 2 additional ones which were put there when they traveled, and those they used for transporting. But that's obviously a very big condition. Soloveitchik suggests another pshat which has a very important message to it. He says like this. There is a difference when we talk in Pekudei with the actual construction of the Mishkan. There's a difference between all the other kalim and the Aron. Okay, with all the other kalim, what you have is everything is placed in its right place. The shulchan, for example, in its correct place. Afterwards, you have the lechem haponim are placed on it, right? So where is that? It's a kiyar. Before that, as Mizbach HaKetores, you got the menorah. Vayasas HaShulchan. There we go. Well, it doesn't say specifically here that he placed the shulchan, the lechem upon him, but it's all done afterwards, right? The menorah is placed there, and only afterwards the menorah is lit, right? It's all the vayasas nereser shiva. It says with the menorah, right? Everything, well, that must be the lamps itself, but everything is done afterwards. When it comes to the Aron, the order is reversed. What does the Torah say? It says v'sam tosham es Aron ha'edus. You need to place there the Aron ha'edus, right? Sorry, I was looking actually in Vayach, that was quite confusing. 1 second. Yeah. So here it is. Here we've got the Oren. That's right. Okay. So sorry, I was looking in the wrong place. If you look up, it's very clear. You look at Parak Mem, the end of Pekudei, Posuk Chof, and you says Vayikach Vaytenes Oedus Ala Oren Vayosem Sabadim Ala Oren. You put the stain on Vaytenes Agoras Ala Oren. Then right, and then it says he brought the Oren inside the Mishkan. Right. So first the luchos are placed in the Oren, and then the Oren is brought to the Mishkan. Everything else, look at Chof base. He places the shulchan inside the oil moed, and then he puts the bread on it, lechem upon him. The menorah goes inside the oil moed, right? And then the neros. The Oren is the reverse. You with me? Right? Everything else is put in place, and then it's used. With the Oren, it's set up outside, and then afterwards it's put inside. Right? Why is this? So he brought a pshat. He brings a pshat in the name of his father, Moshe Soloveitchik, who says that the Oren is fundamentally different to all of the other kelim. The other kelim in the Beis Hamikdash, like the Shulchan and the Menorah, they are kelim without, right, having the lechem haponim on them, or having the menorah being lit, right? The purpose of this are the mitzvahs that you use them for, right? There's two separate things. You have a shulchan, right? You have a menorah, right? Being used for the purposes they're meant, right? And then you have a separate thing, you have a mitzvah you need to use them for, right? That's how it works. However, with the Oren, it's completely different, because the luchos give the Oren its identity. Without the luchos being inside the Oren, it is not an Oren. It is nothing. It doesn't have the significance of an Oren at all, okay? When the Oren is called Aron Ha'edus, that's what it's called, Aron Ha'edus. It is the Oren of testimony. It is only there because it has the luchos inside, okay? And that's why, he says, there was no Oren in the Bayis Sheni, because in the Bayis Sheni, there were no luchos. And if there were no luchos, why couldn't they construct an Oren? Okay, you can't have the luchos inside. It should still have an Oren. It's not difficult to make an Oren. They knew the rules how to build the Oren. The Torah tells you to build it. Why was there no Oren in the Bayis Sheni? The answer is because without the luchos and the Oren was hidden away, you cannot have an Oren. You can only have an Oren if you have the luchos there. And therefore, that is why the you get this distinction here between the fact that he brings up the Rambam. The Rambam doesn't include the Oren in the mitzvah to build the Beis Hamikdash, because the Oren is completely different. The Oren is a distinct mitzvah. It's built for the purpose of the luchos. That the only reason is it exists. It's not like the other kelim, which are there and are intrinsic part. When you build the Beis Hamikdash, this is what you need to build. The Oren exists only because of the luchos, and therefore he says that because the Oren derives its identity from the luchos themselves, that is why there was no problem of removing the staves, right, the badim, before the luchos were placed inside, because beforehand it was not an Oren at all. It only became an Oren once he put the luchos inside, and therefore only now there's a problem of removing the badim. So the fact that it says in Parshas Yaakov, the Somer Badov, and then it says again in Pekudei, he put the luchos inside, and then because it was as soon as they were inside, the luchos were inside. Only then is there a reason. Only then does the lav, right, the issa to remove them actually apply, right? And you have to make sure that from that moment on you can't remove them. What is the idea in this? I'm sorry, it doesn't go further in terms of the idea behind all of this, but perhaps we can suggest that the message here is that of all the items in the Beis Hamikdash, the one, or the Mishkan, and later the Beis Hamikdash, the one that is used to demonstrate to us the critical importance of what you use something for is the Oren. The Oren is only a vehicle. That's what it is. It's a vehicle. It is a vehicle. It has the highest kedusha of all. It is the vehicle for carrying the luchos, the Torah itself. And that is the very item that is used to demonstrate to us that you must never lose sight of what it's really for, of the essence and the aim. Don't get sidetracked in the sense of thinking that the aim in and of itself is the kli, is the item, but think about the function, the purpose, what it's there for, what the ultimate goal is, what the ultimate aim is. And it's a very, very powerful lesson. Of all of the Kalim to teach us that with, it's the Aron, the Torah itself. We have to focus on the values. We have to focus on what it is. What are the mitzvahs? What is it we're meant to learn? How is it we're meant to live, rather than the externals? That's the idea of, we began with the idea of, as I said, of the Sforno and Rav Hirsch, who talk about this idea of the Eile Pekudei HaMishkan. The Pekudei means the significance. There is this idea of everything that's mentioned here is significant in and of itself. They're all significant in their own right, in their own manner towards the Mishkan. They all have significance. Every detail is significant. One of the key lessons of the Aron is to understand that there is a purpose and a function that it exists for, and that is the essence of it. And the rest of it is simply a vehicle for that purpose. There is another idea, I think, where this same message is represented in a different way, and that is the role that Moshe Rabbeinu has. So Moshe Rabbeinu's role is incredibly significant in the end of Parshas Pekudei, because Moshe is granted the task. He is given the task of establishing and setting everything up. Right from Pasuk Yud Zayin onwards. It says, Pasuk Yud Ches, Vayokem Moshe Samishkan, Parak Pasuk Yud Ches. Moshe Rabbeinu sets up the Mishkan. He puts the Adonim, the sockets, the beams, everything. He does everything one after the other. And there is a medrash which says, there's actually more in the Dorim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashra shchinosai ela al gibar v'osher v'chacham v'onav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only rests his shchina on someone who is a gibar, mighty, wealthy, wise, humble. All these things are explained in the Gemara. Where do you learn them? Kulon min Moshe. Now, gibar, how do you know that Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem only rests his shchina on someone who is strong, gibar? You learn that from Moshe Rabbeinu because the Pasuk says, says the Gemara, by Yifros this oil, he spread the oil on the Mishkan. He spread the oil on the Mishkan, right? Now you know that he must have been strong. And the Rosh asks a question now in the Gemara and says, this is all brought in the Sichos Musar Chaim Shmulevitz. He says, why can't we learn from the kroshim, from the beams? It says, Vayokam Moshe Mishkan, Vayosim es kroshim. He set up the beams. From there you can learn that he was a gibar, mighty, strong. Why do you have to learn it from the spreading of the oil? And the Marshal says that it's not a problem because we know that actually it set itself up. Kol me'elov. There was a dialogue in the Medrash between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, I don't know how to do it. So Hashem says, I'll soak biyodecha. You just involve yourself with your hands. Look like you're putting it up. Don't worry, I'll deal with it. It will be set up of its own accord. Don't worry, leave it to me. Okay? And I will all write, Hashem says. Hashem says, I will write in the Torah, you put it up, but really I'm going to do it. You won't be able to do it. Now, the problem, therefore the Marshal says, there's no proof from there that he was strong because Hashem did it himself, right? The problem is, says Chaim Shmulevitz, is that effectively the Medrash goes on to say that you didn't have a role in building the Mishkan as such. So everyone will know that I'm going to write that you set it up, Hashem says, so that everyone will know that without you it could never have been established. So words to that effect. But ultimately, he wasn't able to put it up. So how do we learn that he was a giver? He's still stuck with the problem, right? He wasn't able to do it. Only Hashem could do it. So how do you know that Hashem rests his shechina on someone who is strong and everything? Says Chaim Shmulevitz a very important principle. He says, you have to say like this, that there is a disconnect between the actions and what we do in life, the actions that we need to take and the outcome. They are not necessarily linked. What we are tasked to do, he says, is to do our responsibility. What results from that is min hashamayim. What happens and the effect that we have is not down to us. Moshe Rabbeinu did everything he could. He went through the motions and the actions to set up the Mishkan, and the Mishkan was established of its own accord. The Torah writes, Vayokom Moshe, and Moshe set up. He didn't. Why is it? Because the message is that the way Chaim Shmulevitz puts it like this: Shekol ma'aseh adam u'pu'uloso. everything we do, we have no more than being able to do the actions. We can't go further than do our best and do the actions, put in the motions, go through the motions ourselves. That's what we can do. The result is always min hashamayim. We are never able to, if you like, predict the outcome, to determine what the outcome of what we do will be. We do our best. We do our best. We put out our efforts in. And the idea, he says, is when it says Hashem is mashra shchinose on a gibor, on a, what does that mean? Just because you're strong, therefore Hashem gives you divine inspiration. He says it doesn't mean that you're physically strong. A gibor is someone who puts in maximum effort. That's what it means. It means someone who puts in maximum effort. Who does Hashem choose to rest his divine presence on? Someone who acts like Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayokom Moshe. Moshe put it up. He didn't. He couldn't. Hashem did it, right? But he put in the maximum effort to do so. And because of that, that is an essential quality that a person needs for Nevuah. If you want to get close to the level of anything like Moshe Rabbeinu, the number one thing you have to look for is to be a gibor. I'm not strong. I'm not a weightlifter. It doesn't mean that. It means I put in maximum effort. I do the maximum that I can do. And he says that's the same thing with the Mishnah in Ovis. Ezehu gibor, who is mighty, someone who subdues his inclinations. The same thing. He says, there's a Gemara in Sukkah. If Hashem wouldn't help us, we wouldn't be able to overcome the Yitzhar. It's not in our. It's something which is so difficult. But Hashem helps somebody who puts in the maximum effort. If we put in the maximum effort that we have to overcome the Yitzhar, the same idea, then Hashem supports us in that respect. So he says, ultimately, what we have to do is the outcome and the effect of our actions. That's down to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what we have is the effort that we can put in. That is down to us. And I think that the second sforno that I mentioned earlier, which we won't have time to go through in detail, but you can look it up. The second sforno on the parsha emphasizes that the reason why, he gives the key reasons why it was. He learns the whole of the first pasuk is listing the attributes of the Mishkan over and above the Bayis Rishon and the Bayis Sheni and the Bayis Hamikdash. What was it about the Mishkan that gave it these special qualities? And he says that the reason why it lasted forever was because one of the key qualities is because Asher Pokad al Pi Moshe, because Moshe Rabbeinu was involved. The Pekudei was al Pi Moshe, Mishkan Ho'edus Asher Pokad al Pi Moshe, because it was put together in this way through Moshe Rabbeinu. It had that quality of lasting forever. Moshe Rabbeinu, we said that the idea of Pekudei is that it is about bringing together all the items in the Mishkan, understanding the significance of each and every component. The Aron leads that in the sense that it is, of all the components of the Mishkan, it is the one that only becomes a component. That's the point, right? When you have the luchos inside it. It's not a component. That's why it's not a problem. Take the sticks in and out. It's only a component when you understand the function that it's for. And then when it comes to those who involve themselves, the human beings led by Moshe Rabbeinu in the actual purpose that the Mishkan has for the Bnei Yisrael and the legacy that it leaves for us today, is the essential idea that we cannot predict the outcome. But what we can do is we can dedicate ourselves fully to the task. That's the ability we have. Like the Pekudei, like everything in the Mishkan counting, we can make ourselves count in every way. And when we do that, that's when we can get the schar, and that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will also rest his Shechina upon us as well. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Okay, have a good Shabbos. Okay.